Welcome back, everyone, to Engage at Home, brought to you by Montgomery County's Caregiver Support Program. I have two guests from the Smithsonian's CME program here today. Robin and Amy, would you please introduce yourselves and just tell us a little bit about how you have got involved in the program and what you do?
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. My name is Robin Marquis, and I'm an accessibility and arts consultant. I work in Baltimore and DC around making arts organizations and museums more accessible for people with disabilities. And specifically at the CME program, I'm our community outreach coordinator. So I work on partnerships within the community, recruiting folks who have dementia and their care partners to join us, as well as building out our programming to the community and to people who speak Spanish.
Thank you. Welcome, Robin. And Amy, tell us about you.
Hi, my name is Amy Castine, and I am the contract educator associated with the CME program through the Accessibility Department at the Smithsonian. And I coordinate and liaise between our individual units that host the CME program and the main accessibility department.
And Amy, I know that you have quite a long history with the Smithsonian organization. Do you want to give us a little hint about how you really entered that family?
Yeah, I sort of happened into it, to tell you the truth, in a lot of ways. Becoming involved with the kind of programming that we do was something that happened through an internship through my graduate program, and making the transition about 3 years ago into the CME family was a really natural and expected sort of an offshoot of that.
Beautiful, thank you. It's so terrific to have you both here today. So I think what I'd like you to do is step us through what is the CME program?
Well, the CME program is designed to help folks who are living with dementia and their care partners to have a moment away from the cares of their situation. Part of that is to offer cognitive stimulation and social interaction and engagement with each other. It also includes engagement with a work of art within a museum setting. And traditionally, we've done that in an in-gallery setting, but in recent months, with everything that's been going on, we've switched to a virtual setting, which has been very successful. And so we get together on the computer through Zoom with a group of folks who've been interacting for a while now and know each other pretty well. And we look at one or maybe two works of art or objects from the Smithsonian collection. And that may include paintings, prints, sculptures. We have looked at historical objects and just consider them. We take our time, we slow down, and we enjoy interacting with each other and the artwork in just a really safe environment where we don't have to worry about what's going on. And that is equally for our individuals who are living with dementia and also for their care partners, so that they can just spend time together in a relaxed and enjoyable way.
Thank you. And Robin, I know part of your job is doing that outreach, connecting with new participants. Amy mentioned there are folk who've been in the program for a while. Will new people feel comfortable joining?
Yeah, absolutely. We do have new folks joining our program regularly, and it's the point of the program is really to create friendship and intimacy, and so that it is a really welcoming environment. When we were in gallery, we were switching between doing programs that were people who would come with their care partner or their family member, and then also group settings, so folks from senior facilities, memory care units, etc. And so we have two different kind of forms where if people from a senior facility want to do the program as a unit themselves, because we know those are their own little communities, or from a village, or really any kind of group of seniors, we also have those programs as well.
Thank you. So I've known your program as in gallery, and I know its impact is incredible. And Amy, you talked about that you have pivoted really well to now offer this as a Zoom experience. So could you tell our listeners and our viewers a little bit about how they could imagine having benefit through a virtual CME program?
The easiest way to answer that is simply to tell you what our visitors have told us. And there are a couple of different areas where people have reported specific benefits from the program. One was when we were talking about artwork that was related to activism and to the current political situation. People had the opportunity to speak their truth and their experience of that moment, but also in the same moment of experience, they had the chance to step back and to escape a little bit from some of the more stressful elements of the current situation. And because we are offering this in an environment where folks can be in a peaceful space and relaxing together, they have a sense of an emotional release from that. Another area where we found, and this is in gallery as well as virtual, one of our participants who has younger onset dementia said that she's working with a speech pathologist. And one of the things that she does as a part of her regular self-care and treatment is to work on speech activities, whether that's something that's through an app or an activity that her speech pathologist gives her. She's practicing her word finding and the ways that she can support her own progress with her illness. And she said that on the days when she visits a program, both in gallery or online, she has enough time doing those activities as she engages with other people that she doesn't have to do any other exercises for the rest of the day. It functions for her in a very therapeutic method and a very therapeutic way of helping her to maintain some level of control over her situation and her developing symptoms.
Thank you. And one of the things that I really like what you described was that this program is a space where the care partner and the person who has the diagnosis can enter into, and now it's in a virtual space, you know, using Zoom, and get away from that, the grind of every day. You know, all of those things that are critical as providing care for someone, or maybe the challenges of having a diagnosis. And from my knowledge of the program, and I'm wondering if Robin, you'd like to add to this, is that there is such joy and there is such release because the participants are engaging with art and the creative process, and they themselves create a creative process in their experience.
Yeah, I think one thing, especially with switching to virtual programming, that we've noticed, and that's been really joyful for me, is there, in some ways right now things are so monotonous, and there's levels of stress, but there's also so many moments of boredom or of listlessness. But then on the other side, there's a lot of overwhelming content, and quickly museums have picked up and cultural centers have been sharing, and there's so much content to share. And so it's either kind of this overwhelmingness or not enough. And I think one thing that's wonderful about our program, and we've heard from participants, is it's a nice balance where there's a little bit of content. We usually only, like Amy said, look at 2 to 3 different objects. So there's still some learning that's happening. There's some creativity. There's exposure to art and history, but it's slowed down, and it's at a pace where we all can just breathe and also have our beings be part of it as well. So it's not just a lecture or something where you're sitting passive, listening and learning. You're really part of the experience. And that was true in gallery, but I see it's even more more necessary for all of us too, not just the participants, but those of us who are facilitators, the docents from each of our units, the educators. We all leave the programs just feeling better, honestly.
Mm. And Amy, I wanted to just double back on something that you described, and it was when there was an activity that was looking at part of the Smithsonian's collection that referred to past eras where there had been protests, there had been civil unrest, and you were able to harness this incredible collection within the Smithsonian. So I think that's worth so much.
I think some of the things that people have gained from those conversations is a feeling of empowerment, knowing that in their history and in their past that they have been able to impact their world, and then they get to share that and talk about it in a setting where they're surrounded by folks who are with them completely. And for the participants who are there with maybe their children who are their care partners or a spouse, it's been interesting to see moments where maybe a daughter will look at her mom and be like, wow, or remembering moments that they hadn't thought about in so very long, because the reminiscence brings up something that was meaningful. And it's really nice to see that. And the side benefit of that is seeing someone who is in a stressful caregiver role being able to just spend time with mom for a little while, or just sit with their spouse in this moment that's disconnected from anything related to caregiving, and just spending time together in the role that they've chosen for themselves, not the one that's been put on them by the diagnosis.
Beautifully put. Thank you. So Amy, you've told us a lot about the benefits of the program. Could you now get into a little bit more detail about what happens? So could you tell us about a topic or a piece of art that you've discussed, and really how that unfolded with both the facilitation and also the engagement of those that were participating?
Well, the types of work that we look at vary depending on which unit is hosting the program. We have 4 units that are currently doing that and facilitating programs. We rotate through them. They are the National Portrait Gallery, the Smithsonian American Art Museum, the Freer Gallery, which is Asian art and American art as well. And then we also have the National Museum of American History. So we have a very big range of possibilities and points of entry for folks to find something that interests them, which I think is really fabulous. In our recent program with the Asian Art Museum, we looked at an exhibition of a well-known Japanese artist named Hokusai. He was a printmaker and a painter, and we're actually gearing up to have a second look at a few more pieces from the collection of his works that are on exhibit at the moment. And it's really lovely because the works are relatively small. So we're going into this from the virtual perspective and saying things are so much more open now. We can look at things that are very, very small. We can zoom in and see them very closely. We saw a lovely piece called Boy with a View of Mount Fuji, I believe was the title. And it was this beautiful, very zen piece. It's from behind, seeing a young boy sitting in the crook of a tree, looking off into the distance at Mount Fuji. So we had the opportunity to view that as individuals who maybe are not of Japanese descent, maybe don't know a lot about Japanese culture, and we were able to take a good close look at that and say, these are elements that I resonate with, even though I'm not of Japanese descent. We also had a couple of individuals who either had lived in Japan at one point in their history or were of Asian descent, and so knew more about that. So we get to hear from them and a bit about their culture and their experience. So it's really nice. There was this sharing kind of an experience centered around the artwork. And then in American history, we talked about collecting practices and why museums collect what they do. And we were able to broaden that to our audience from looking at Julia Child's Kitchen and how that was collected into the American History Collection. And then we also talked about the things that our participants collect, which was a lot of fun. They were bringing objects to the screen so that we could see the things that they collected, objects made by a son, or a chair that was collected from an antique store. And so just there's these beautiful, beautiful connections between people and objects and those around them. And I think it was really one of the best parts of that day was that a couple of our participants were celebrating their 60th anniversary that day, and were able to share a beautiful arrangement of flowers that had come for them as part of their celebration. And then we got to enjoy that moment with them. I think it was just a beautiful connection for sure. And the artwork makes it possible. It's an entree for that.
Thank you so much. Robin, do you have any other insights that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think Amy, bringing up the collection part, each program usually has some creative or participatory element at the end. And so that's looked like everything from sharing something from your home. We've created poems together, various things that people can do that are a little bit more creative or body-based at the end of a program too. So yes, it is about looking at art and discussing and objects and discussing them, but also about finding little ways to be creative oneself and not getting into intense art practice, because we don't want to make anyone feel like they have to do that. But yeah, that's been a big joy of the program too, is the interactive creative element.
And that leads me to, I'm hearing some of the caregivers who I connect with, and sometimes they have challenges themselves. They, like you described earlier, that they're exhausted, they've got a lot on their plate, and sometimes they can't see how this kind of program either would work and how it would impact their loved one. And you've talked about, some examples. Could you go in a little bit deeper, Amy, and just talk about how you as a facilitator, how you work with that diversity of the caregiver and the person with the diagnosis, and then weaving in this creative cultural experience?
I think that if I'm understanding her question, and that what you're getting at is how we deal with people at different levels and how we encounter people where they are, which is really what we're doing. Our job is to make it possible for someone to engage at whatever level that they are at. And that, for the most part, where we find that that's most effective is when we just interact with people as people. There's an organization in England that I read a quote from. They said, it's not special treatment, it's just special awareness. And that's what we encourage in all of our facilitators and docents and educators who are working with this population, that we're not doing anything tremendously differently than what we would do with any other audience that came into our museum. And because of that, the care partners, the person who's got a brand new diagnosis, the person who's a bit more progressed in their condition, are all coming to this at the same space. And I think that's probably what is most successful, because we're not placing our own outside expectations on what someone's engagement is going to look like. But we're offering them the opportunity to engage in whatever way they're able. And I think that makes a big difference. And what we've seen with that is that the caregivers get to have a conversation with other people, so they get a little bit more social interaction than maybe they would have at home on their own, because it's just them and their loved one. They get to have a little broader contact. But then there's moments when someone is just sitting, just listening, taking it all in and engaging. You can see in their face that they're paying attention, and then they'll say something that feels rather out of the blue, but it's just such an affirmation that they are connecting and they are engaging. And I've seen a few, like more than a couple of care partners tear up a little bit just in that moment of, oh, my mom just said that. That's fabulous. And I think those are the moments that we're aiming for by being respectful, by allowing people to be in the space in the way that they do it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Robin, I know that museums sometimes have a certain place in people's minds, and if they haven't been regular museum goers, it may be likely that the CME program isn't something that they've explored. Now that the CME program is virtual and we've taken that big barrier away called getting downtown and parking the car and getting from the car with your loved one to the museum, this can open up the CME program to so many more people. Would you tell us a little bit about how you're going about that?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's such a good and important point, and something that we've been really thrilled about. At first, there was some fear, of course, and now we're like, oh, this is not just a fill-in or temporary Band-Aid until we can get back in the galleries. We're seeing participants who, because they don't have to go through the stressful parts of getting to the museum and parking and everything that can come up, our folks, especially with dementia, are participating so much more. The verbal engagement is just at such a higher level, and that has been really such a good learning moment for all of us. Of, oh, maybe now we see that this is something we should and can continue to do. So even once we are able to be back in the museums, once they do open, we plan to still have virtual programming because it's an access point, and that's what Access Smithsonian is all about, is how to support people who, for many different reasons, have not felt comfortable going to museums, have not felt like they could, and that we really bring programs to where people are at. Another thing that we're doing is knowing that many people don't have access to internet or to technology and have reliable connections through that. So we're working right now on creating a phone-based program that is for everyone who would be on their phone, sending in images to people in facilities so that they can look at an actual artwork or an object in front of them. Currently, you can call into our Zoom programs with just a phone line, so that is an access point. You don't have to have a computer or internet connection, and we do verbal descriptions, so people still feel connected. But we're really seeing, and people outside of the very central downtown area, people in Maryland and Virginia who've wanted to come to our programs for a long time but have not been able to.
And Amy knows this. I have been a big supporter of the CME program for many years and tirelessly ensuring that everyone in Montgomery County that I could let know knew about it, but we knew that there was a barrier, and Montgomery County to the mall is quite a way. But the way that you have pivoted so well to become a meaningful virtual program, I suspect you're going to see more Montgomery County residents. So how can people learn about the program? How can they attend it? How can they register? Robin, why don't you give us some of those details?
Yeah, so we have a page on our website, on Access Smithsonian's website, where you can learn a little bit more about the program. And we do our programs bi-monthly on the first and third Wednesdays of the month from 2 to 3 p.m. And we rotate through the museums, like Amy had mentioned. And to learn more about registering, we ask that you email us at the access@si.edu. So then you can talk to us directly. We can learn more about you and what your interests are in the program and answer any specific questions. And so it's pretty easy. There's no registration on any page process. It's really to reach out to us directly.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. And all of that detail that Robin just shared, I will include on the episode where you found Engage at Home session. So we have reached the end of our interview. It has gone so fast and we've had such a great time learning more about the Smithsonian CME program. Robin, I know that there is so much that you have planned and have a vision for. Could you share some of your final thoughts on what you would like people to have as a takeaway?
Yeah, so we are working right now in building partnerships with facilities in the community, specifically senior centers, residential facilities, and people who are looking for programs to have in their space virtually, so that we can offer this not just to care partners and dyads and people with dementia, but the larger community. So if people are listening and watching this who are from a facility or work with a facility, please reach out. We can organize specific programs at a time that works for you to bring this program to you specifically.
Thank you. I'm hoping people take you up on that, because once again, to be able to partner with the Smithsonian's is a very meaningful opportunity. So Amy, I'm going to give you the final word. It's been great having you here. What do you want people to have as a takeaway from this time together?
I've been thinking about respite care and what that looks like and what people think that looks like. And instead of thinking about respite and self-care as something that you do when you've reached your end and when you have nothing left and you need a weekend away or a vacation, that's very challenging to do right now. And I would invite people rather to think of respite as something that can be done sharing an hour of peaceful time with your loved one, and as a time of just setting down extraneous roles and enjoying time just being the daughter, the wife, the husband, the son with your loved one, and allowing that to build you up and lift you into a better place.
That's a beautiful way to finish our interview. So Robin and Amy, thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
You have been watching Engage at Home, brought to you by Montgomery County's Caregiver Support Program. I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us today, and I want to remind you to stay calm.